If you have any kind of electronics at home or even your phone, um, every once in a while, if it's messing up, they'll tell you to turn the power off. You'll do a reset. Sometimes you have to do a hard reset. And what that reset does is it kind of will kick everything back up, and sometimes it wipes the slate clean. Um, and I thought that would be so nice if we could have a reset for our life. Every once in a while, I would like a fast forward or a rewind or a pause. But there's times in my life that I'm thinking, man, a reset. If we just had a reset button for life, how nice would that be? Well, I want to give you hope. If you feel like your life needs a reset, if you don't like the way it's going, then I want you to know that in Jesus, you can have a reset. And we're going to talk about this morning of how to have a reset. It's one thing to want a reset, but how do you do a reset of your life? And the character that we're going to use, most of you know his story. His name is Peter. Peter is one of my favorite disciples. He may not have been the wisest disciple, but he gives me hope. If you struggle with temper, if you struggle with not feeling good enough, if you struggle with the one being kind of on the outside, I want you to know that Jesus embraces all of us. And Peter gives me hope because Peter was he was just real with Jesus. He didn't try to pretend that he was somebody that he wasn't, but sometimes his mouth got ahead of his emotions, and we've all been there, haven't we? Where we decide, yeah, this sounds really good in the moment, and we're going to volunteer for this, and we're going to volunteer for that. And then it's time to do it, and we're like, why did I even volunteer? Or you have the ones that, have you done this? Call me anytime. Seriously, anytime, day or night, I'm there for you. You just call me on the phone, and I'm there for you. And the phone rings at 4 o'clock in the morning, and you're like, oh, why did I say that? Because my my voice, my words got ahead of what I was actually wanting to do. And Peter finds himself doing the same thing. He says something that in the moment it sounds so good, and it really sounds like something that he could do. Man, but when it came right down to it, he couldn't live up to what his word said. And what I'm talking about in this instance is Jesus is talking about his mission and the fact that one day soon, here's what's going to happen to me. They're going to come after me and they're going to take me away. And I'm going to die on a cross, but don't be upset because soon you're going to see me again. The other disciples are listening, but Peter, the one with the mouth, steps up and says, oh, no, Lord. Nope, nope, nope. Not with me here. I got your back. They take you down, man. I'm going to be right there with you. I'm going to share that last breath with you. You can count on me. I'm going to be there till the very end. These other guys, they may run, but not me. Not me. And I really believe that he meant that 100%. Because, see, there wasn't a threat going on right then. It was easy to say, wasn't it? It sounded good. And he really believed that that's what would happen. But instead, Jesus, knowing the future, tells him, before that rooster crows the third time, before he crows, you will deny me 3 times. That didn't sound right to Peter. Surely not. This may be the one time Jesus is wrong. Surely, surely not. But sure enough, that's what happens. 3 times they're asked to Peter, hey, weren't you just with him? No, not me. Yeah, you sound, your accent, I'm sure I saw you. I'm sure I saw. No, wasn't me. And then in the background of that scene, as he says the very last word, he hears the rooster. Man, if you could do a do-over, I think that's a moment you'd want to go back and say, I'm not going to make that promise, or I'm going to live up to my promise. But man, this is the ultimate of failure. He never let me down. He never walked away from me when everybody else did. He saw something in me, and I saw what he did for everybody and how he served us. And even the last night together, he of all people washed our feet. The thing that a servant should do, a slave should do. But our leader washed our feet. And I really believed I would be there for him. Well, what do I do now? How do I reconcile this? You know, we all have guilt and shame in our life. But I think that one, man, that one's rough. The guilt that I've carried and the shame that I've carried, yeah, that's a little heavy, but wow. Peter, my heart goes out to him. But Jesus doesn't leave us in that broken state. Jesus has everything that we need. So if you want to read the rest of that story, I'm going to read a few verses, but it's found in the chapter, the 21st chapter of John. And right at this time, when we're going to talk about this, this is where Peter has just experienced the most huge failure of his life. He had bragged about putting down the other disciples, that they wouldn't stand with Jesus, but he would. So what does Peter do? Peter goes back to his former way of life. He goes back to what he knows best. He goes back to fishing. He's hanging around with the disciples, and they don't know where to go from here. And so he simply says, you know, I'm going to go fish. That's what I know. That's what I'm qualified to do. I'm going to go fish. And 7 of the other disciples, they decide, you know what? It's better than just sitting around here. Maybe we can make some money, because, see, that was Peter's income. That was his business. And when they traveled with Jesus, things were taken care of. But now he's back on his own again. I'm going to go back and do what I did before. So often we are tempted when we have what we call a colossal failure. Even in our spiritual walk, we're very tempted to go back to what life used to be. But here's the thing. You know the saying, you can never go home again. And what that means by that is you'll never have the same feeling that you had when you were there before. Because, see, when you go back home, you've changed a little bit. You've had some different experiences. So it's not the same feeling. And I think Peter was looking for that same feeling of before Christ came on the scene. But man, you talk about a world that was changed in his life. Everything he thought, everything that he counted on, when Jesus came on the scene, it changed him completely. And going back to what he used to do, it didn't feel the same. You know, the good thing is about fishing is if you don't want to be alone, yet you don't want to talk, that's when you take somebody fishing. Like, I really don't want to be alone. I want your company, but I really don't want to talk to you. I don't want to listen. But I don't want to sit alone. That was a good thing about Peter. He had his friends around him. They were all sitting in silence, but don't you know their thoughts were screaming? What would it have been like if you could have read their thoughts? It's dark. It's nighttime. That's when they fish the best there, because in the daytime it's too hot. The fish stay down where it's cooler, but at nighttime they come up to the surface. And they're doing what they did before. They all know how to fish and throw out the nets, but they're just going through the motions. And I'm sure that was one time where they contemplated, man, what just happened the last 3 years? And what do I do with that? All the other disciples, see, they hadn't made those promises, so they were probably making plans, but I don't think Peter could even see anything past the last interaction. In fact, one place in the Bible says that Jesus actually saw Peter. He made eye contact with Peter. Maybe after the first time he denied him, the second time, I don't know. But he made contact, and don't you know that pierced Peter's soul? Jesus didn't have to say a word, yet he could hear the last words before the rooster crows. You will deny me. I'm sure Peter's body posture was a little slumped over because of the heaviness. But here's where things change. I'm wanting to tell you Peter's story so I can give you hope in your story. If it feels like you've failed, if it feels like the whole world is crashing in on you and it is dark and nothing seems to feel right, Jesus won't leave you there. You can do a reset. If you've gone cold in your walk with Him, if you've pushed things aside, if you're no longer on fire for Him, I want you to know that this morning you can do a reset. And I'm going to show you how here in just a minute. So they're out there, and then there's not even any fish to even break up the silence. There's nothing. But way far off on the shore, they see a flicker of light. Well, that's odd. We didn't hear anybody. And before that sounds strange to you, when you're on the water, sounds carry quite a ways. And if you've ever been out there on water in the stillness of the night, you can hear sounds from miles around, it seems like. They hadn't heard anything, yet they saw the fire. And it got their attention. And from the boat, they could even hear a voice that said, "Hey, you caught anything?" "No." "Then throw your net on the other side." And as they start to do this, Peter is like, "Oh, snap, this feels familiar. We haven't caught anything. There's a voice with a direction of what to do. And oh my goodness." And one of them in the boat says, "That's Jesus." Peter says, "That's Jesus, my Lord." Peter doesn't even think twice before he dives off of the boat and is heading towards the shore, probably faster than they can row the boat. And in his mind, I don't know what he's thinking except for, I need to apologize. I need to apologize. What is he going to say to me? I don't know. But here's my chance to make it somewhat right. And as he gets to shore and he's panting and he's dripping wet, Jesus is doing the oddest thing. He's cooking breakfast for them. He's already got some fish. See, what's wonderful about this is they were looking for fish. They found no fish until they heard the voice of Jesus. And when they got to where Jesus was, what was he cooking? The fish. So after they ate, here is the conversation that takes place between Peter and Jesus. And I'm sure while they're eating, Peter is waiting the whole time for that break in conversation of, "Hey, can we talk? We have something we need to talk about." Ah. But Jesus, what he said when he came to the earth is he said, "I didn't come to condemn the earth. I came to give you life." Peter's waiting for the conversation that should have been, "Told you. I I I wanted to count on you, and I knew I couldn't." That's what Peter's playing in his mind, because that's probably what Peter would tell somebody. "Man, dude, what happened? I turned around, you said you had my back, and man, you just threw me out there to the wolves. Where were you? And not only did you just hide, man, you even denied that you knew me." That's what Peter would have said, probably followed with a fist. But Jesus, he's not like us. He understands us. He became one of us. But he's not like us. So here I want to read the conversation between Jesus and Peter at this time. This is found in the 21st chapter of John. And I'm going to read verses 15 through 17. So when they had eaten breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of Jonah." Now at this point, he's got everybody's attention, because the disciples knew what Peter did too. Some gentleman might decide to excuse herself, but I bet you the disciples were a little nosy. I bet instead of excusing themselves, they kind of leaned in a little bit to see what was going to take place. And here's what Jesus says: "Do you love me more than these?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord. You know that I love you." Disciples are thinking, didn't show it by your actions, did you? But Jesus knows the heart. Jesus knows how Peter's heart is crushed and broken. He says, "You know that I love you." And he gives him the commandment. He says, "Feed my lambs." And he said to him again a second time, "Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me?" He said to him, "Yes, Lord. You know that I love you." He said to him, "Tend my sheep." He said to him the third time, "Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me?" Peter was grieved. His heart was hurt because he had said to him the third time, "Do you love me?" And he said to him, "Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you." And Jesus said to him, "Feed my sheep." Now that sounds kind of odd, doesn't it? To Peter, Peter's a fisherman. Before he told him, "I'm going to make you fishers of men." Now he's like, feed my sheep." He doesn't feel worthy. He doesn't feel qualified. But Jesus knows the future. Excuse me. So, one thing I want to pay attention to in that verse, he says, for now we're going to talk about a reset. If you notice, he doesn't talk about it in the past tense. He doesn't say, "Did you love me?" Peter doesn't say, "I did." He didn't say, "Will you love me?" Peter said, "I will." He said, "Do you love me?" Oh, so here's what's really cool about this. Don't let this go past us. When Jesus, God, talks to us, he talks in the present tense. He finds you right there in that moment. What's wonderful is he doesn't bring up your past. He finds you right where you are at that moment. And then when he talks to you also about your future. He let Peter know, "I haven't given up on you because I'm giving you an assignment." So every person that's here today and every person in this world has an assignment that God has put over your life. And if you haven't discovered that yet, if you don't know how to follow his direction, then you can do a reset again this morning. You can say, "Let's start this over because God, see, you don't bring up my past. I want to have my past forgiven, but then after that, unless I can bring a lesson from it, we're going to go forward." The bad thing is when people bring up your past, we need to remind them we're not living in the past any longer, are we? We're living in this moment right now. And that's what Jesus does. He does a reset of Peter's future. Peter thought it was going to go one way, but Jesus is now giving him a directive for his future. That means Jesus hasn't given up hope on him. Jesus still believes in him, and Jesus is still saying, "I have a plan for you." So whatever your past was, whatever keeps hanging up on your past, let it stay in the past because God's not looking there anymore. But you don't want to miss your future because you're still hanging out in the past. Let God talk to you right where you are this moment, this state of mind, this emotional turmoil, if that's where you're at. Let him speak to you in that moment. And then together, let's work towards your future. Ask God, what is it that you have for me? What steps do you want me to take? This gave Peter hope. So if you're going to do a reset, then the first thing that you have to do to reset your life is you have to accept that gift of grace. If you don't ever accept it, you're never going to have a reset in life. And it's never going to go any different than what it's going right now. It's not going to get any better than what it's doing right now if you can't ever accept the grace and forgiveness to move on to the new chapter and the better things that God has for you in your life. So if you need a reset, then what I would suggest that you do is you listen to God's voice, not the enemy's voice, and you accept that gift of forgiveness. You ask God, say, God, forgive me because I haven't been giving it my all when it comes to you. I've been fitting you in, but I haven't been giving you my all. God, forgive me because I haven't been stopping and praying when you bring somebody's mind, their name into my mind. Forgive me. I want to do a reset on that. God, I haven't been as patient and I haven't been as kind as I should be. I haven't been living the way that I should be. So God, I want to do a reset. Isn't that a wonderful opportunity that we have, that we can do a reset? As long as we are breathing, we can reset with God. And then we just have to have, by grace, accept that forgiveness and go, okay, now let's take what we learned from that way and let's move forward. That's your first step of having a reset in your life. And then what he does after he frees Peter from his past, he can redeem everything in your life as well as free you from your past. He took him right back. That very spot where he was at was right where the whole thing started with Peter. His whole journey started right there. And it was a sense of redemption because, see, now Peter in this same area, he wasn't the same man anymore. He had some wisdom underneath his belt. He had seen some things. His eyes had been opened up and his viewpoint of God had been expanded. I love the fact that so often people will want to start afresh, and maybe they have to start afresh, they say, by a new location. And I get that. But you know what is the best? Is if you stay in that same location and people see the change in you. And they're like, man, didn't you used to be? Yep, that was me. Didn't you used to do? Yep, I did. What happened? I came back to show you who I am now. I'm not the same person. Jesus came into my life. See, so he took him right back to where when he found Peter the first time, Peter, again, was frustrated. He hadn't caught any fish. Bills were piling up. He was upset. He was doubting not only his vocation, but his ability, his talent. He was probably feeling less than good enough. He couldn't even provide for his household. That's where Jesus found Peter the first time. And now we're brought right back again. But now here's redemption, here's forgiveness, here's a reset, and here's a whole new business plan. Feed my sheep. So if you're going to do a reset and you're going to follow Jesus, that foundation has to be on love. I want you to notice something in the verse that we read. Jesus said, Peter, do you love me more than these? What is these? We have no idea, and I'm actually really glad that the writer didn't say what these were. Maybe Jesus pointed somewhere and the writer left it off. Maybe Jesus was very vague. I think that's one of those fill in the blank things, don't you? Because he wanted to know, if you love me more than these, then you're able to feed my sheep. But if you don't love me more than these, then I can't give you the future and the impact of your ministry that I want to do if you don't love me more than these. So I don't know. Let's maybe put ourselves there and perhaps go through a few little ideas of what these could have been. Do you think maybe perhaps when he says, do you love me more than these, that he pointed to The fishing gear, the net, the boat. So then what would that be? Peter, do you love me more than your career? Peter, do you love me more than the material? Do you love me more than these? That could have been one scenario. He could have said, Peter, do you love me more than these? And he could have pointed to the other disciples. Do you think you love me more than all of these other people that's here? That could have been one of those. But if we really want to reset our life, we have to say, we love you more than these. Whatever that is in your life. He says, if you love me more than these, then I'm able to build my church upon you. Because, see, I'm leaving and I need for you to make a difference in this world. So if you love me more than, you fill in the blank, then everything else will be okay. But you have to build your spiritual journey and your destiny on a foundation of your love for Christ. So how do we show love? Oh, it's not just by our words. Haven't you heard of the abusive relationships where the husband or the wife beat each other up and then they say, but I love you? Yeah, your words may be right, but your actions, they're completely wrong. Jesus goes by our actions, not just our words. That's why it says faith without works is not faith. It's just dead. So we can tell Jesus all day long, I love you. I love you, God. Want you right there with me. I love you. I love you. I love you. But do we love him more than these? That's a question that Jesus had to know with Peter, and that's what he needs to know with us. If you had nothing, would you still love me? If you had everything, would you still love me? See, another thing that Jesus could have said when he said, do you love me more than these? When he went fishing, he took his buddies, didn't he? That was his social group. So Jesus might say, do you love me more than your social standing? Do you love me more than being popular or getting those followers and those likes on Instagram? Do you love me more than the clubs that you go to with your friends? I don't know what he was asking Peter. I don't know what your these is. I know what my these was to check. So that's an individual walk that we have to have, but everything with God has to be built on that foundation of love. See, Jesus says, if you really love me, then feed my sheep. So how do you reset? Number one, you accept the grace of forgiveness. Number two, you look at your priorities in life. You find out where Jesus stands on the scope of his life, and you can tell where that is because that's where we put our time, our talent, and our money. And then the third thing that if you want to do a reset, especially if you want to get that spark back again, Jesus tells him how to reset his life. Feed my sheep. It's about serving others. It's about doing things for other people. It's like being God's hands extended. That's how you do a reset. In other words, Jesus says, you show me that you love me by feeding my sheep. If you love me, you will serve me. And if you love me, you will love my sheep. See, let's don't just attend church. That's good. But let's be church. Let's be church outside of the walls. Let's be what church is supposed to be. Let's be where we live such a life that we don't even have to wear the Christian t-shirt or the cross on our necklace, that people know automatically, I think they're a Christian because there's just something about them. The way that the presence when they walk into a place, the way that they conduct themselves, the way that they act, their vocabulary, the kindness. Oh, that's how we know who our shepherd is because, see, if we're good sheep, we're going to follow that shepherd. Jesus says, feed my sheep. See, Peter, when he denied Jesus, he went back to fishing. That was what he was qualified to do. But that's not what he was called to do. He was called to feed the sheep. So here's what's great. You can be qualified to do certain things, and those can blend in with your calling. That's awesome. But let's make sure that we don't get what we're qualified confused with what we're called to do spiritually. If you make them work together, that's great. But ask God, if I were you and you want to reset, what are you calling me to do? Not what am I qualified to do, because see, he will equip you for what you need. But what are you calling me to do? If life's not centered around God and the ministry, the good news is today you can have a reset. And you can go on the most exciting, most rewarding journey of your life. That's good news. It's good news that we can do a reset and we can embrace all that God has for us and all that God has intended for us to do. So in closing, again, just to recap, if you want to reset in your life, accept his forgiveness. Don't keep beating yourself up. God, I'm sorry, I let you down. I haven't been who I'm supposed to be. I've done the wrong things. That's good. Apologize. But then accept his grace. Accept his grace and then invest into his kingdom. Invest into the church that you go to. Invest into the community that you're in. Invest in the relationships that you're in. Because that's feeding the sheep. And then look for a place to serve. Do you know it's sad to say that I've known some Christians for 40 years or so, and never once have I seen them ever volunteer for a church function or a church activity. Not once. And that's okay if they are investing in other volunteer services, other projects, other communities. But if you're not, maybe ask God, where can I serve? How can I help build this kingdom? Invest in where you are. Invest in the people that's in your life. And if you go to a church, wherever that church is, invest into the church. You know, so often people will complain about a problem in church or something that they don't like, but really what we should do is we should say, how can I be an answer to that problem? Or what am I doing about that problem? Am I praying about it, or am I just complaining about it? Well, what you're doing is you're hindering all that you are meant to be. And I don't know about you, but when I get to heaven, I don't want to have the I wished I would have, I should have, I didn't know that I could have. Every morning I want to show God, show me. I want to show him that I'm able and that I'm willing, if you will just show me what to do. Because I want to be real honest, I read something one time where somebody like slid into heaven. Hair was all a mess. They were laughing and they were like, wow. And they were worn out, but they were like, wow, what a ride. That's what I want to be like. I want it to be like, wow, what a journey. What a journey. And so we all have that opportunity, because wherever you're at in life, God knows your situation. So don't say, well, if I was physically able to, I could do blah, blah, blah. Well, you may not physically be able to, But emotionally or mentally or spiritually, there's a boatload of things that you can do. God knows your situation. So don't let where you are in your situation hinder you from working in his kingdom. And I promise it'll be the best, most rewarding journey of your life. So in the closing song, if you walked in here a little down, a little discouraged, a little confused, a little broken, you have an opportunity to start a reset in the way that you think about things. Don't pray for less problems, pray for more wisdom. Don't pray for less problems, pray for more skills and solutions of how to work through those situations. So if you're going to do your reset, one of the best things that I think that I would pray for, and I do pray for, is God, give me wisdom. Give me wisdom to not repeat the same old stuff. Give me wisdom of how to know to go forward building your kingdom. I love each and every one of you. Even if I've never met you, I love you because you were here this morning and you showed God that you loved him by being here. I'm proud of you. I'm proud because you didn't get up and walk away when I was preaching. You listened to me. I'm proud of that. And I'm not saying if you had to go to the bathroom, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about even if you went out, you came back in. I'm saying that you stayed, that you listened. And I want you to know I'm praying for you in your journey. God bless you.